Guys, Gary Gulman is on Punching Up tonight. I didn't want to bury the lead. So if you are on the verge of losing your mind about us losing our democracy and it makes you want to cry yourself to sleep or cry when you wake up, then you're everyone, and tonight's show is for you. Leadership's inability to read the room is driving me crazy. And so I figured it was a perfect time to have a comedian on. But also, Gary does a ton of stuff about mental health, and that is something that we are all struggling with right now. Myself included. I'm Maya May, and this is Punching Up. And so I'm glad that you are with us. Today, I fight fascist fuckery with a smile sometimes, but sometimes I'm like, ah! And if you're not familiar with Gary Gulman's comedy, what? It's so good. You'll never think of Shark Tank, Karate Kid, or Trader Joe's the same ever again. And to me, that's good comedy, is if it shifts your perspective, changes the way you think about something. That's actually my barometer for a good anything, a good poem, anything. It shifts your perspective, and that's what he does. And he's just a good guy. So with that, without further ado, I want to bring, there you are, Gary.
Wow.
Hey.
The best part was when you said I was a good guy. Thank you. I appreciate that.
It was all the G's. There's so many.
There are a lot of G's in my world.
Yeah, and the reason I say good guy is because a lot of comedians can, posting reels and posting funny stuff and sure, but you post mostly things to help people.
Yeah, I've started to do that. I years ago I posted tips for comedians of all ages to improve their writing and performance and things like that. And then before this year, I knew that this was going to be a particularly difficult year for sensitive, thoughtful people, and so I started sharing the things that I used to get out of a crippling depression that lasted for 2.5 years. I've had depression, major depressive disorder, undiagnosed and diagnosed since I was like 7 years old. But I've been healthy for about 7 years now, and part of my gratitude is that I feel an obligation to share what helped me, because I felt that there was an obligation there after you feel better to try and help some other people get out of that. So that's where I am right now. I occasionally post I occasionally post funny bits, but I feel like this is more important now. Although laughing is very important, and I don't want to discount that.
That's very true. Yes, laughter is important, but if a lot of us are using laughter as a defensive mechanism as opposed to a processing
Yeah.
mechanism, I think obviously both are important, but we don't want to avoid the feelings that we're having. And what you're sharing is helping us actually process them, which is so incredibly important. And guys, I forgot to go through his list, his discography, if you will, because I just assume you know who Gary Gulman is. But he has his latest special, Born on Third Base, on Max, The Great Depression, which is why we're going to talk about some of the mental health stuff. And whenever I think about what my favorite bit is of yours, it's actually hard to say because they're all my favorite bits.
Oh,
This is the thing.
thank
They're all
you.
my favorite bits.
Thank you.
But I want to talk about one of your more recent ones, the opening bit on Born on Third Base, Mommy Look.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so the premise of it is that one man shows are people going, "Mommy, look."
Yeah.
Uh, I look at Trump and I'm like, is everything that's happening right now his one man show? Is this his mommy look?
I mean, it's a psychosis, a pathology, and who knows who did what to him, but it goes beyond. I mean, we're all as humans so effed up, and we all have the right, if you think about it, to take out our pain and suffering on the world. If you wanted to say that you earn your right to take out things on the world if you've been harmed by it, but most of us are decent, humane, compassionate, empathetic enough to try and divert that energy into something positive, or at least um, socially responsible. And then this person and the people he's surrounded them with, it's just it's heartbreaking. And I mean, that recent quote by Elon Musk about the weakness in Western civilization being empathy is just, it's bone chilling. It's really bone chilling. And unless we're existing right now in a computer simulation, it seems, it seems so far removed from humaneness, decency. I mean, I'm still waiting for that moment that we've seen in movies and in the McCarthy hearings, where somebody screams enough, or Jack Nicholson admits to his crimes in A Few Good Men, says, "You're goddamn right, I did." Or the attorney Joe Welch says, "At long last, sir, have you no decency?" And we all wake up from this fever dream, or the end of Lord of the Flies, where the adult comes and all of a sudden these feral children start to act humane again. And it's just, it's taking too long. But then again, um, our ancestors have struggled for longer, and so maybe we're impatient because we've seen how quickly they dispensed with Richard M. Nixon and other people of his ilk, and this seems particularly protracted.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's like common decency, the thing that we were all raised with, the idea,
Yeah.
like for at one point in time, empathy was considered not just a Christian value, but everything value. We were taught the golden rule. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of this mind fuck right now that what's being celebrated are the Andrew Tates of the world, and that being mean, like the whole reason this show is called Punching Up is because
Yeah.
it's about punching up at power structures, not
Yes.
punching down. And punching down is what gets rewarded. And it's like, how do you raise kids in a world like that? How do you exist in a world like that? And so, yes, if you're all feeling crazy right now, don't worry, we're also feeling it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's perfectly normal to be depressed about an incredibly depressing situation. There were two things that I just thought of in terms of who is being rewarded for their behavior. I don't know if you've seen this Toni Morrison interview that's been circulating, where she says evil is boring, it's ordinary, and
mm,
it's easy. And I just love that, because it's so true. It's just, it acts the same way every time. It doesn't require any thought, and it appeals. And this is the interesting thing, and I'm sure I've read a number of articles about this over the years, is that the appeal of these men, and particularly Trump and Musk and Andrew Tate, is a teenage adolescent mindset, where a teenage boy is drawn to this type of persona, and then you grow out of it. Except that a lot of men have not grown out of it, and there are enough of them to tip the scales in favor of this fascism. And I remember in college, there was this professor named Paul Brinus at my college, and he was a very interesting man. And this was the first time I ever heard anybody posit this idea. He said what Hitler and the Nazis were doing was a reaction, or a rebuke of women and their traits. And so Hitler and the Nazis felt that women were weak, and also Jews had similar affects and interests to women, and that they were into the creative arts, and that they were stereotypically less aggressive than men, and spent most of their time reading and not fighting, and things like that. And I as the rise of this fascist MAGA movement has taken hold, it just echoes exactly what that professor said so eloquently back then. And I remember it being a kind of a, to me at the time, kind of a radical insight that I had never thought of. We just had this idea, oh, Hitler was bad, the Nazis were bad, but there was no insight into sort of the psychology of it. And I found that really, really compelling. And there's no one answer, but it as history repeats itself, it's interesting to see how angry a lot of these men are at women and what they consider womanly traits.
Empathy, of course,
Yeah.
right, which is
Yeah.
the idea to nurture. And I love that. First of all, you've mentioned several books now, a college lecture. I need everyone to understand that Gary is like, so you know how comedy clubs have like a 2 drink minimum. Gary's like a 2 book minimum kind of comic. And I absolutely love that about you, because your comedy wasn't always inherently political, or it isn't even inherently political now. But you studied, you were an accounting major, or what did you study at
Yeah,
school?
yeah.
Right.
I was an accounting major, and I worked for the CPA firm, which is now Price Waterhouse Coopers. And
That could have been your
but
life.
could have been my life, except from the first day I was like, oh no, I have to get good enough at stand up, or figure out some other line of work that has more of a ethical manifestation in it, because counting uh making balance sheet entries and bookkeeping is not really contributing what I imagine myself capable of contributing to the world.
Yes, you're worth so much more than what's on a balance sheet, Gary. But in this economy, I think is one of the first specials of yours where I felt like, oh, there's a lot of there's talking about class issues and things like that. And so, and what this election was supposedly supposed to be about the economy, which what are your thoughts on that?
No, it was about a man versus a woman, and a reprehensible, despicable man versus a highly capable and charming and whip smart and with a platform. And it's just it's been so heartbreaking. I think what's interesting about saying that I'm a political comedian is that suddenly class and poor versus rich became political, and it used to just be a little color that you would paint in your stories with, which was just your life versus, like, I've found it, and it's unfortunate, I guess, because it means that people still find it funny to talk about how broke you are. But I've found it's always been at every level of my career, that was a thing that could bring a sense of commonality with an audience. The other thing is, you really have to get better audiences in order to talk about things that are now hot button issues like class. And so those open mic shows and the first 5 years of comedy where you're just performing to whoever shows up at a bar, it's tough to really get your political point of view in there unless you have just nerves of steel. So it was a matter of sneaking in these ideas and philosophies over the years. But that election, I mean, almost feel guilty for being so naive about how angry at women the men are, and how many white women are feeling able to go along with that mindset and enable that mindset. I mean, I do you think there's much more to it than rejecting the idea of having a woman, and a woman of color, of course, in charge of their lives? Which, please,
So I was one of the people that was like, please stop bagging on Biden. We need him. He's already there. He's already won
yeah,
before. He's the only person to have beaten Trump. Yes, I get that he's old, but he's old and white, and America loves old and white. Please, let's keep him in. And I
thank
would
you.
tell you, I was having like quiet conversations in DMs with Dem strategists about this, and they're like, "Oh no, America's ready for a Black woman president." I was like, "You've never been a Black woman in America. You have no idea what you're talking about." I would
Wow.
love for America to be ready for that. But as we've all seen, she was the perfect candidate, not a DEI candidate at all, and
No.
was offering an economic message that should have resonated with the working class and did with much of the working class, but didn't resonate with the misogynists. So,
Yeah.
and the racist. And so now we have what we have. Um, and apparently, there was just a survey. I don't know if you saw this, that men, boys under 21 are like mostly went conservative, like mostly and it's like that to me it's mind boggling, and it does call to mind open mics. Um, because the transphobia that I used to hear at open mics, like that I still hear occasionally when I pop in, it's rampant, and it actually got me to thinking about just politicians in general and how they can play to the lowest common denominator because that's easy, and that's what it feels like MAGA is doing. So shifting gears a little bit, um, should all politicians be required to do stand up for a year just so
Oh,
they have to
that's
have the experience?
that's interesting. I mean, the whole thing is that I find and it's interesting that you bring up the Biden thing, because on one occasion, I actually chastised a comedian who went on before me, and this is such bad form, and I regretted it immediately. And I said, "You're not doing anything original by saying that Joe Biden is old, or that he has memory lapses and his speech is not good." I've heard dozens of comedians do the same exact joke with almost the same wording, and also you're going to get this into people's head, and it's going to make them more supportive of Trump. I don't know whether the thing is that comedy is so hard to do well and so easy to do in a mediocre, unoriginal fashion. So I think I mean, basically Trump is doing a hacky 1980s comedy act, and so he fits right in with Joe Rogan, and I'm trying to think who some of these other guys. I mean, the main one is Joe Rogan. This man is a middle act. He's a middle act, not a strong one, and they're all in that category. They have no craft, they have no skill, they have no insight, they're not doing anything original, and for some reason, and I have to give credit to Colin Quinn's late mother, who said, and I say this all the time, if you give people a choice between something of quality and bullshit, they will choose bullshit every single time. And Colin said, "Yeah, Ma, sometimes they'll choose bullshit." And she said, "No, you're not listening to me. They will choose bullshit every single time." And that's what we have. You look at television, and what's the most popular, and a show like The Wire that could never get viewers, and the housewives of Orange County, they can't do enough stupid versions of that, and the Kardashians, and we're not in 1984. We are in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where we've just amused ourselves to death, which is another book that I
I was
recommend.
gonna say we need a book
Yeah,
counter, an illusion to like
yeah,
how many times Gary can fit in a book that
yeah.
we
I
probably
mean,
all
I
need
I
to
I
read.
don't know if anybody's ever said this, but I am what I read, and that's what's made me. There's no better way to get empathy and an understanding of what it's like to live in someone else's head than it is to read, and read a lot, and to read broadly. And I just and we're a nation of TV watchers, and passive, and entertainment. Even though we're entertained 24 hours a day, we seem to be entertainment starved.
So, and it's interesting because of course that's why they're banning books, right? Like they
Yeah.
don't want people to have that empathy because books help create empathy. Going to the theater helps create empathy. And so just even the fact that Trump wants to take over the Kennedy Center is so that he can destroy even that. It's like they just don't want us to be able to relate to each other, which is why it is so important that class is an issue that people are talking about now, because that is very much what bonds us. The us against them is really like 99% of people against the 1% who are trying to extract all of our resources while we're all just like, please, thank you, can I have some more? Okay, that's MAGA. On the MAGA side, lowest common denominator. Chuck Schumer, a lot of the Dem leadership, people have been screaming this at them online, myself included. They do not know how to read the room. They
No.
are not listening. And
No.
so, can you do like an orientation for Democratic leadership on how to read the room?
Oh, interesting. I just I don't think they care to read the room. I think they're like the comedian who is out to get a sitcom deal or to gain a internet following. So and Noam Chomsky pointed this out, and nobody's paying attention, that their audience, that the will of the people is it's so naive to think that that's what the Congress and the Senate and the president is interested in, the will of the people. They're they are comedians who are trying to get a deal. They are comedians who are trying to get more money from big donors. So if there's a big donor, I mean they and the what surprises me most is how cheaply they were bought. For $250 million, Elon Musk bought a president, and you would think it would take more.
Way more.
I wouldn't come that cheaply. I wouldn't do a commercial. I wouldn't do a commercial for a credit card company for less than $250 million. Like
So
that.
he's got to come
I'm
with the big bucks if they're gonna, because he got
yeah.
the president and the whole country. Like, it's a really good deal. Now, I'm not a math person, but I'm sure with compounding, maybe it's like an investment that it grows. I don't
Yeah.
know what, like he got us on the cheap. Maybe we were already on the way out. I don't know.
I don't know, but he'll be able to replicate this in other countries, except ones that don't have the equivalent of Citizens United. I just wanted to be a did you ever notice comedian, and the Iraq War and Cheney and the second Bush made us all, who were marginally interested and civics oriented, into political beings and political comedians. And maybe I always should have been that way, and America should have been that way, but we are able to. And there's always been a nightmare at the top, but it's never been this bad, and it's never been an existential issue. And the problem is that even when I started comedy in 1994, there were comedians saying that it was the end of the world, and that they were there to do play by play for the dissolution of America, and they were all Chicken Littles. And so nobody paid attention when it became real, starting and Chuck Klosterman wrote a great book called The 90s, which he talked about how up until that Bush Gore election, there wasn't that great a difference between the two candidates in what the effect was. And there were occasions, I think Nixon versus uh, well, Nixon versus Kennedy, and then LBJ versus Goldwater. But ultimately, in my lifetime, 2000 was really the first time where it seemed like there was a vast difference in the direction this country was going to go. And luckily, we have those idyllic times with the Obama 2008 to 2016. But other than that, it's just been it's been heartbreaking to watch just the anti-intellectualism and the anti-woman and the indifference or outright attack on the climate. It's
Well, and that's the thing. It's like we have actual real existential issues like the climate
yeah,
that need to be
yeah,
solved. And honestly, I thought that we'd be in a different place by now. I thought we were moving in a pretty decent trajectory. But apparently I wasn't hanging out with enough 18 to 25-year-old white boys. And
yeah,
I missed it. I missed it,
yeah.
but I thought things were going slightly well. So we have Tim Walz. I don't know if you saw the Tim Walz's clip from a town hall. He's doing a joke. Have you seen this yet? Let's.
No.
Okay, we have it. Sam, could you roll that?
Saying on my phone, I don't know, some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So, and if you own one, we're not blaming you. You can take dental floss and pull the Tesla thing off, you know, and take out, just telling you.
They're doing stand up now. Think I think the town hall, like the Venn diagram of town halls and stand up open mic is a circle.
Yeah.
I which okay, I want them to listen to the people, right? And I feel like that's why people love AOC is because she listens. She reads the room,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so you brought up such a good point in that everybody who is not listening is just out there trying to get their own special, or AKA reelected or the big donor money. And
Yeah.
so is this our new metric for how we should measure a politician is are they listening? How can we determine are they listening to the people? Because in comedy, you tell the people what happens if you don't listen to your audience.
Yeah, I mean you bomb, but there's also in AOC it almost feels like a someone who is going to have to be in the right rooms
Mm,
and in comedy where I just know that you and I would love it if she was able to enact every leftist, progressive, socialist program because it's the term socialist. Why is it okay for us to hold up billionaires and make their lives easier and their taxes lowered, but it's not okay for poor people who $10,000 means a lot, and $10,000 is less valuable to a billionaire than a tenth of a penny or less. And to even cut up a penny into 10 pieces would require you to invest in all kinds of welding equipment and a mask.
it would be very
And
expensive.
it's just an obscene wealth gap. And I'm told that people are convinced that they need to look out for the billionaires because they all believe that someday they'll be a billionaire. And I'm here to tell you that you might not even be a millionaire ever. It's such a long shot, and by the time you are a millionaire, you realize that that's a difficult position probably to be in as well in terms of paying your rent, depending on which city you're living in. And so in terms of the comedy analogy, the issue with AOC is that they are able to denounce her as a socialist, and the same thing they were able to do with Bernie. And so I understand our conscience and I understand our point of view, but there's also a pragmatism to politics and a practicality, and it's just such a bummer because I feel like AOC has a certain, I mean is it would be a bigger comedian than I am, but I am a very niche comedian. For whatever reason, there are 1,000 people in about 30 cities who get me and will buy a ticket to see me. But for the most part, people don't connect with me in any meaningful way. And every once in a while, I'll put out a clip that will get millions of views. But for the most part, I'm for a very weird group, and I'm so grateful for my audience, and AOC should be too. She's appealing to the best of us.
Yeah,
And
and I agree with you there. And I think, and also, by the way, in hearing all this, I'm realizing you do need to actually be the strategist for the Democratic Party. Like, I think actually we need somebody to see this show and say, you know what, we're going to start incorporating Gary's ideas because they need help. They need it. And she is niche and you are niche, but this idea that we can evolve and become better people, like we have to have a vision for that at some point. Like we have to put that on the vision board, that we can figure out how to take care of each other, because that's what America has lost, this idea that we somehow don't need each other. Like we forget that products have to be made, right? And we forget that, like in any interaction, there's several people behind that thing that we need. And now everything is very transactional, and it's like, oh, it just popped up. Like it just popped up. And no, it didn't just pop up. Somebody had to carefully make that thing or deliver that thing. And so I feel like, and you talk about this on your Instagram, the need for community. Could you, Sam, could you pull up the OneNote? That's the, there it is. Where is it? There we go. Oh, that one. Also that one, but there's the other one that I want to see. Yes, that one. Those little interactions at the deli or the coffee shop increase your dopamine and serotonin. Smile, throw some salutations around, and feel a little better. This is everything. This is what I do to make myself feel good. Sometimes I'll just go to Trader Joe's just to talk to the cashiers. Like I don't actually need anything but to be happy. And we've lost that in a sense. Can you talk about, and we'll talk about the other one too, but just what about your daily routine? Like what are you doing right now to stay upbeat, to stay connected to other individuals?
yeah, I mean, one thing that I know is that I'm I'm better after I've spent some time with people. And the interesting thing about when you're 18 to 25, it's, at least it was the case with me, that I thought I don't feel that great about myself. And I'm surrounded by the idea that if you accomplish something great, if you drive a great car, or have a beautiful girlfriend or boyfriend or partner, you will then be happy. That's the message we're given since we're little. And then you get a little bit older and you get some of those things. Maybe you get a job that you are aspired to. Maybe you have a beautiful partner. Maybe you have a car that you were told was going to make you happy, and then it doesn't make you happy. And then hopefully you start looking for answers as to why that is, rather than trying to accumulate more because you think that more cars and bigger houses is the key. And what you realize, and it took me into my 30s and 40s, was that I was going to do things in comedy that would have made me happy and feel accomplished a year before, and then they were empty. And you have that feeling, is that there all there is? Being on a late night show, being on a TV series, and like, and now I make my living at this. That used to be enough, and it's not enough. And then you realize that all we have is this. What you and I are sharing, Maya, is conversations with like-minded people, and our friends, and hopefully our family. But sometimes our family is not giving, and so we find family in our friends. But these are the only things, when I look back on my greatest days in my life, they almost never have anything to do with an accomplishment or a material object. They always have to do with, I can remember playing basketball at 13 years old with 3 friends, and it's one of my greatest moments of my life. And it was, I didn't play all that well. I just knew. And the lucky thing about my brain was I knew at the time this is going to be one of those unforgettable moments for the rest of my life. And so if we seek out those things rather than a better version, as long as you have a car that works and is reliable, as long as you have a home that keeps you warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and enables you to feel safe. I mean, there's no reason for a summer house. I don't think you should have a second home unless you are a fireman or Snoopy. There's no reason for that. And I just I and here's another book, The Most Good You Can Do by Peter Singer, is this philosophy of effective altruism, where some people go so far as to give one of their kidneys because they only want to live on what they absolutely need. But some people just give away their excess income, and so
I thought you were going to
there's
say kids, give away one of their kids.
no,
It's like, no.
no. But I just think that this consumption, and of course a capitalist world needs this, people desiring more. And the other thing is this version of capitalism is so violent and
Mhm.
so aggressive, and we are forced to hoard our money because they want to take away every safety net possible. And I understand that, and people have this need for security, but as the existentialists teach us, there is no ultimate security. We can be struck by lightning at any point, or a tornado can take us, or the dollar can become worthless in a moment's notice. There is only security
Anytime
in
now.
in each other, in each other. And if we could rely on us looking out for each other. It's so interesting because I've lived in a lot of affluent neighborhoods in New York City, and after I had my breakdown in 2017, I decided I wanted to have an apartment that I could afford if I had no income for a year. And so I found the best bang for my buck was in Harlem, and in no other neighborhood in New York City. And I lived in the Village, the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side, and in Midtown, West and East. I never knew any of my neighbors and these affluent neighbors. And I mean, people I would ride in an elevator day to day, the only people I would know were my doormen. And by leaps and bounds, this experience in Harlem is so much more connected. There is something about a working class neighborhood that I don't know what it is. It's almost a magic, and it's just it's extraordinary. And I don't know if you've seen the Oscar winning documentary, and it's called No Other Land, and it's
Oh,
about a Palestinian and an Israeli Jew. And the thing that gave me some hope, and it's a very dark movie, and it's sad and it's heartbreaking, but these people who were literally forced into living in caves because of the Israeli government bulldozing their homes and their elementary school. They're living in caves, but I watched them as they laughed at inside jokes. And I thought, my word, that spirit, and you read about it in other groups of oppressed and people during the worst times in history, able to share laughter, and also in protest. And I find that going to a protest without exception during the Black Lives Matter protests in the summer of 2020, and now protests I've gone against Trump and against the I mean, it's interesting because I go to these protests and I'm a Jew who is protesting the Jewish homeland and their behavior, and it's very strange. Even Jews are so divided over this, and I'm sure there'll be an angry Zionist who is angry at me for not being more supportive and will call me self-hating. But there's just there yes, October 7th was a horrific massacre. I do not discount that, but I do not think that Netanyahu's approach to this situation is doing anything but making it possible that whoever was abducted, I can't remember his name, but abducted by the Trump administration, said, and I love this idea, that the safety of Jews and Palestinians is intertwined, period. And I don't know how any right-thinking person can't agree with that statement. And the man's been disappeared in America.
Mhm. Well, and I think the thing is, because it's a complex concept and we're not built in America to understand complexity anymore. But this is why I try to talk to people about fascism. They will immediately go for the most marginalized among us because they know that people will look the other way.
Yeah.
And they'll just, as we're looking the other way, they're pecking themselves closer and closer and closer, because we're all marginalized in this class division. There is the 1% and there is everybody else. And so the idea of coming together is absolutely what they do not want. They do not
Right.
want us to
Right.
see the humanity in each other. And like you said, community and humanity is all we actually have. And I think in communities that are under-resourced, what we have is being present with each other. It's a culture around being present, and anybody knows whether how much money that you have or how little money you have. When you're present with people that you care about, that's what actually makes you feel good. That's what's fulfilling. And if you
Yes.
contrast that with a more goal-oriented, capitalistic-oriented system where you're never present, it's always about what's the next thing I can get? What's the next thing I can get? What's the next thing I can get? The saddest I've been in my life is when I've had the most amount of money. And what they're hoping is that people won't have a ton of money to ever realize that money can't
Yeah.
buy happiness. They know most people are just going
Yeah.
to be chasing the carrot their whole lives, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's so very important for us right now. This is why I keep saying it's like like there's good billionaires, right? I want to be like Mark Cuban. I was like, we need you. Send more
Yeah.
money. Send help. Like, we need our good billionaires to fight our bad billionaires right now. Like, I want to live in
Yes.
reality, right? And we need
Yes.
that.
Yes.
But more than money, we need each other. And so I'm so glad that you said that, and that you recognize that, because that's what I try to talk about here, is how we can stay connected with each other, because
Yeah.
this fight is not going to be won if we are at each other's throats. It's just not. And I think the canary in the coal mine has already passed out, and we're supposed to be surrounding it and resuscitating the little birdie,
Yeah.
and not arguing about,
Right.
where the birdie's from. No, we have to resuscitate the little
Yeah.
bird. Gary, I absolutely loved having you on. This was
Oh, it was such a pleasure. I could go on for the next 3 hours. Thank you so much for having me, and for being such a forceful voice in this fight. I look forward to seeing your Instagram posts whenever you post them. It seems frequent enough, and you do it with a smile on your face, and it must be hard, but it's so compelling and so helpful. And sometimes it feels like we're preaching to the converted, but the converted have never needed a pep talk the way we do now. And just knowing there are other like-minded people, and that's the great thing about going to a protest, is you feel you're not alone in this. There are other people who get it, and may have some insight. And I remember in 2020, you would go to one protest, and maybe it wasn't well attended, but then you'd find out about another one, and that was better attended, and it was just a matter of the community. And it's just, that's like you said, that's what they don't want, is us coming together. And so we're very powerful when we're together.
Yeah. So more togetherness. Before you go, I have one question that I'm now asking
Yes.
everyone.
Okay.
Is what are you saying now? Because this is me trying to, because I feel like we can't do this on our own. We need the people who've been disengaged for whatever reason. What are you saying in your life to the both sides are the same, my vote doesn't matter people? What are you saying to them? I want to scream at them personally.
I mean, I don't know that I have anything that I say to them. I know that their minds can't be changed, and ultimately, I don't know that we need them. I really think if we could have gotten the people who were like-minded just to vote for our side. I think I just don't think you can change a person's mind who is no longer in their right mind, and they are so fearful of losing the very little that they have or the very much that they have that they think they worked so hard for, and they're not going to read the books you suggest.
Really?
And I just think it's more important to comfort those who need us, and to do the things that the righteous were doing at the different during the different times in our history. During the different times in our history, there were people doing the right thing and risking their lives, and we have to be like those. We have to be like those people. And
So you're
and so
saying I shouldn't? Are you saying I shouldn't like keep spamming
it's
things
yeah,
at them?
no, I think if there was somebody who was genuinely curious, whose mind was open, but trying to pry open a closed mind, I think there could be better time and effort spent in getting information to people who are still open-minded. Anybody who voted for Trump a second, a third time, they're lost.
Yeah, they are. And I've actually, there was a clip I was watching of a focus group of Michigan voters who are now regretting their vote, but they were all, most of them were saying things like, well, he said he was going to go do these things, but I didn't think he'd do these things. And it's like, what are you watching? What are
Yeah,
you paying
yeah.
attention to?
It,
So yeah, I
it was coming.
understand once
Yeah,
somebody's
it
down
was
the
coming
rabbit
out of a
hole.
white it was coming out of a white man's mouth, and so I was more comfortable with it than coming out of a woman of color's mouth. I mean, they're just they're my wife made a very good comment about somebody I was arguing with in my family, and she said, "Gary, you're talking to them like they're on your level intellectually," and and they're not, and that sounds snobbish,
I know it was
and
all like,
and
guys, what we're not saying, 2 books, 3 books, 4 books, 5 book minimum.
yeah,
That's all.
yeah,
5 book
yeah.
minimum.
I mean, you could give them Caste, and you could give them the new Jim Crow, and even if they opened it, I can't imagine they'd change their minds.
Okay, they might not change their minds, but I'm all about planting a seed, which is, I think, where comedy does come in. Um, I think that's planting seeds, and so somebody might wander
Totally.
into one of your shows not
Yeah.
knowing what they're going to get, and then maybe they get a little bit, and they hear a little bit about welfare and your thoughts on that,
Yeah.
and
Right.
Pop Tarts and things, and so
Right. Yeah.
maybe the best
Yeah.
way
I
is
mean,
for
if the, if I were to say something about welfare that they might understand and yet they don't always do, it's just if you want to look at it cynically and as a transaction, it's a great investment in in a future taxpayer. This person you spend some money on and
speak
send
your
them to
language.
college is going to be worth money to you down there, and you will not have to support their family or their. I mean, but they don't. They America is like the they're mean older brothers, and I know what it's like to have mean older brothers. They don't want the younger to get anything they didn't get, and they secretly resent and are jealous. And so I mean, I have two older brothers who are just basically bullies, and not very curious men, and I don't talk to them anymore.
And as I say, that's MAGA. So I guess what we need is comedy, therapy, right? Because
Yeah.
if everybody would just go to therapy, like I think we should have therapy in the grocery store. Like there's just at the end cap, like just a place where
Yeah.
you can have therapy, drive-through
Yes.
therapy, like nonstop therapy.
Yes.
Maybe,
Yes.
just maybe we'd get there. And I
Bring,
also think that everybody out there who is like-minded, y'all, bring one of your non-like-minded friends to one of Gary's shows, and you never know. You
you
never
never
know.
know.
And
You
you
never
have an
know.
opportunity to do so. This is me plugging. I'm plugging your show now, but this
Thank
is a
you.
one-man show that you're doing. It's different than your stand-up, but
Yeah.
let's plug it anyway. In LA, you're going to be in LA in May, May 9th through
May
10th.
9th and 10th. Yes.
Okay.
At Largo at the Coronet, and it's called Grandiloquent, and it was a show that I did 36 shows in New York City in the Village, and it was reviewed by the very ecstatic reviews by the New York Times and the New Yorker. I was featured in the New Yorker for it, so it's really it's been called my best work, and I can't disagree.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see it. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for you. And I am just glad that you're in the world. And everyone, please, please, please find Gary on Instagram. I have had people reach out to me and say, like, oh, his stuff is so helpful, etc. I was like, yes,
Oh,
exactly. That's why I
that's so nice to
want to have
hear.
them. It is. And so you're changing lives and you're impacting people. And I always try to remind everybody who's putting good into the world that
Yeah.
that
I-
that's,
The,
that's happening.
the secret, or the dirty little secret about doing good things and kind, generous things, is that it makes me feel good. So it's if you have to look at it from that viewpoint, that it makes you feel better, make it a transaction. You do this to feel better, but it's just I think it's in our DNA to help each other, and so that it would make sense that we get a good feeling from it.
Absolutely, the good guy, Gary Gulman, the good guy. That's what I'm going to call you now, Gary Gulman, the good guy. Thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
so much,
on.
and thank you for your encouragement and friendship, and say to everyone in the family, say hi to everyone in the family.
I will, and you as well, and I hopefully will see you back on the show sometime or out in the world.
Anytime within reason. Yes, I love being on this show. It's so helpful.
Right. Thanks, Gary. There you have it, guys. We have to be there for each other. We can laugh our way through this, but it has to be towards a community, right? And that's, again, it's punching up, not punching down. And so it's so important in our humor that we take care of each other, and that we remember that this is going to be a lengthy fight, and it's not going to be an easy one by any means. And listening to each other is just as important as our leadership listening to constituents. And so ask that of your Congress people. Ask that, say that. To your elected officials, I need to know that you're hearing me. I need to know that you're listening. And I need to see that you're incorporating feedback, because that is what representative democracy is supposed to be about. So stay loud. Keep engaging. Thank you for watching the show. We're on Substack now, so that's good. Follow me at Maya on Stage there, and all platforms. I promise to post there, and we'll see you next week.